Hello, my name is Claire Tyler from Claire Tyler Couture. Today I'd like to talk to you about sewing with stretch fabrics. I know a lot of people are nervous about sewing with stretch, but there are a few tips I can give you that will really help. The first thing you need to think about when you're going to make a garment with stretch is what type of fabric you're going to use. This is a lovely cotton jersey here, and it's got a nice bit of recovery to it. But you need to make sure it's the right fabric for your pattern. Most commercial patterns, like this one here, will have a symbol on the back, like this one here, going from a solid black line into a white line. And that's telling you they want the fabric to stretch from this amount here up to this one. So I'll show you how to do that with this piece of fabric here. I'm going to place the fabric on the black line and then make sure it will pull all the way out to the end of the white line. So this fabric will be perfectly fine for making this garment. A lot of independent patterns don't have those symbols, but they normally tell you somewhere in the pattern how much stretch your fabric needs to have. I've just been working on one, the Lark Tea by Grainline actually, which tells you they'd like your fabric to stretch from 5 inches up to 6. So again, we can do this here. Place your finger on the 5 inches and just make sure it will stretch out to 6. So that fabric will be fine for making a t-shirt like the Lark Tea. Once you've chosen your fabric, there are a few bits of equipment you might like to use, I find really helpful. The first one is a walking foot. This is the walking foot here. It's got little teeth underneath here, so as you're sewing, the teeth on the foot will pull the fabric through from the top at the same rate that the feed dogs on the machine are pulling them through from underneath. So that's the walking foot. I'll show you how to put that on the machine in just a moment. The other thing you'll need to do is to change your needle. There are 2 types of needles for your machine. There are stretch needles or ballpoint or jersey needles. The stretch needles are for fabrics with lycra, and the ballpoint or jersey are for knitted fabrics. I find that stretch needles work for about 90% of the garments I'm making. I always tend to have both of them in my sewing box, just in case one doesn't work, the other one will. I also like to use Schmetz needles. These are Schmetz needles, they're colour coded, which is really useful. You'll see they've got 2 colours. The top one is the type of needle and the one underneath is the size. So yellow means stretch needle. And all their needles are colour coded, so it makes it really easy to know which needle you're using. If you're a bit of a geek like me, there's an app you can get for your phone that will tell you all the colour codings for the needles. So that's a really useful thing to get as well. There are a couple of pieces of interfacing that I like to use when I'm working with stretch. The first one is a woven interfacing. You can buy this by the metre, but I always have this cut into strips for using on the shoulders of garments. You don't want the shoulders to stretch, so a bit of cotton woven interfacing will help with that. And then the other one is a stretch interfacing. So this is a stretch interfacing here. Again, you buy this by the metre and cut it into strips, and I use this in the hems at the bottom or in the bottom of the sleeves. It stops the fabric from curling and it also gives you a nice edge to turn up on. So I'll show you how to use that again in a moment. And one last thing, when I'm cutting out, I quite like to use the micro serrated scissors. These are lovely scissors. They've got little serrations in them here, which will pull the fabric towards the scissors when you're cutting out. So that makes it a lot easier, particularly when you're working with a fine jersey. So that's all the bits of equipment that I like to use that you'll find really helpful. And now I'm going to show you how to use them all. So now I want to show you how to use all the bits and pieces I just told you about. I've already put the stretch needle on the machine here, so that's all ready to go. And I threaded it in a normal way, and I like to use a good quality sewing thread when I'm working with stretch fabrics. To put the walking foot on the machine, the most important thing to know is that this arm here needs to go above the screw that you use to change the needle. So that's what we're going to be doing. So I'm just going to move the needle up to its highest position so that I can do that. And unscrew the foot from the machine, and you need to take the screw right out on most machines. Anyway, on this machine I need to take the screw right out to take off the existing foot, and then I like to put the screw back in a little way just so it catches, which is always tricky, especially with long nails. So just get the screw back in just so it catches a little bit, and these little claws here on the left hand side of the foot, they're going to go around this screw. So these little claws here are going to go around the screw. So if you hold the arm up with your thumb, put the foot around the back, and then those claws will go over the screw like that. I'll just do that again for you so you can see. So hold the little arm up on the foot, take the foot around the back, and those claws there go over the screw. So that's in the right place and all ready to be tightened up. So I'm going to use the screwdriver again to tighten that up. Just using my right hand just to balance the foot so it doesn't jump off the back. But it's fairly stable now, so just tighten the screw up as far as you can. And then we're ready to go. So when you come to stitch your seams on your garment, you'll need to use a stitch that is going to give with the fabric. On these machines, I like to use the lightning stitch, which is this one here, number 5 for this particular machine. It goes, you can see it goes 2 stitches forward and 1 stitch back, like a flat zigzag. So that means that your seam will give with your fabric. So I'm going to select that stitch on the machine here, and we can stitch a seam. So I've pinned my fabric together, my 2 pieces of fabric together. I've just used long straight pins. I like to use long glass headed pins when I'm making. You can get ballpoint pins, but I just find as long as you've got nice sharp pins, that's absolutely fine. I'm going to place this under the foot. Another couple of things I need to let you know about. Sewing machines really like to eat stretch fabrics. So always start about 1/2 centimetre in from the top of your fabric so that your needle's going to go right into your fabric. Hold onto your threads, and I normally lower the needle down into the fabric, and I like to slow the machine down as well. Take everything nice and slowly. Hold onto your threads for the first couple of stitches, and then you're going to go forward and take the pins out as you go. It always feels a little bit slow when you're stitching with stretch fabrics, as it is going forwards and back, but don't try and rush it. The other thing is not to do a reverse. This also gives the machine an opportunity to eat your fabric, so never do a reverse when you're working with stretch fabrics. So you can see there, that's a lovely little flat zigzag, and the seam will give with the fabric, so you won't get any popped seams. There is another stitch that you can use when you're making up your garment, and that will be the triple stretch stitch, which on this machine is number 4. Now this will be doing 3 stitches forward and 2 stitches back. It's a really strong seam, particularly good on the crotch seam of trousers. It's also quite a nice decorative seam. So I'm going to show you an example of that. I'm going to pin 2 pieces of fabric together. Let's make sure they're right size together, even though it's only a sample. And just a quick word about pinning. There are lots of different discussions about the right way to pin, but really there's no right or wrong, it's your personal choice. I like to pin parallel to the edge of the fabric. I use my pins like a tacking, so I'm pinning more or less where I'm going to be stitching. So I'm using a 5/8 or 1.5 centimetre seam allowance here, and pinning where I'm going to be stitching, and that holds everything in place exactly in the right place. I'll just put one more in here just to hold it. So I'm going to select stitch number 4, and again I'm going to try and find the end of my thread. There we go. Start good half a centimetre in from the top, 1/4 of an inch in from the top. Oops. Hold on to your threads and then stitch forward. Now this will be a particularly slow stitch because it's doing, as I said, 3 forward and 2 back. Always always try and stop with your needle down before you take your pins out. This machine does it automatically for me, but always try and stop with your needle down, then you won't risk distorting your seam when you take your pin out. Going to uncurl that last little bit because it's quite a curly jersey. And again, no reverse at the end. And just take out your fabric. And there you can see that is now a triple stretch stitch. It's still got a bit of stretch to it. It's much stronger than the lightning stitch. So like I said, I'd like to do that on the crotch seam of trousers. It's also quite a nice decorative stitch to do on garments that are not stretch. It's like a nice top stitch. So we've done our seams and now we need to look at doing our hem. So I mentioned earlier the stretch interfacing, which I've got here. And I always cut this into 1-inch strips and have a basket of it ready for doing my hems. You're going to place this on the edge of your fabric, right up to the edge, and then press it in place. Like that. So you can see that's nicely fused to your fabric, but it's still got plenty of give. And what that does, it stops it curling and it gives you a really nice edge to turn up on, like that. So I'm just going to turn my hem up. One thing I haven't mentioned about stretch fabrics is they don't fray. So you don't need to neaten any of the raw edges in your garment. If you've got an overlock and you want to neaten them, that's fine, but they're not going to fray, so you literally can just turn them up and stitch them. So I'm going to pin, again I'm pinning parallel to the edge and where I want to be stitching. So that's all ready to go to the machine. There are several different stitches you could use for doing your hems. You could use a twin needle like this one here. This is a twin stretch needle. And so you can thread up your machine with 2 threads and use that one. You could use a cover stitch machine, which looks the same as the twin needle, but it's a specific machine just for doing that. You could use any of the stitches we use for sewing our seams, as long as it's a stretch stitch. You can use one of those. But the one that I like to use is number 8 on this machine, which is the triple zigzag stitch, and this does 3 stitches up and 3 stitches down. It's a nice decorative zigzag. It's actually the one I do on my cuffs here. You can see that just there. So that's what I'm going to do on my sample. I'll select the number 8 stitch, and you can play about with the stitch width and size. I think I've got it on stitch width 7 and stitch length 1.5, and I'm going to line up the walking foot. I've got it so the raw edge is just at the inside edge of the walking foot, so that means it's going to really catch down that edge. And because I'm starting with an edge here, I'm going to start half a centimetre in from the edge, lower the needle, hold on to your threads and stitch forward. So I'm just guiding the fabric, keeping it nice and straight. And when I get to the end, again, no reverse. Don't give that machine a chance to eat your fabric. And that's your seam from the wrong side. And that's from the right side. So still a bit of stretch, so particularly if you're doing the cuffs like mine, you want something that's going to have plenty of stretch. And that's how you do a hem. So that's all my top tips for sewing with knits. I hope it's been helpful. Do go and give it a go, and hopefully it won't be quite so scary now. If you'd like the video, please subscribe by clicking the button just here. Leave any comments below. You'll also find links for all the bits and pieces that I've used as well. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you soon.